Jay opened his eyes slowly. The sun was shining through the curtains, but he didn't feel warm. He didn't feel alive. He stared at the ceiling for a few minutes and asked himself, why did I even wake up? It was the same question he had asked for the past 6 months. Since his mother died, every day felt heavy. Every morning felt like a mistake. Jay was only 22, but he felt like his life was already over. He got out of bed slowly. The floor was cold under his feet, just like his heart. The house was quiet. Too quiet. It used to be filled with laughter, music, and the smell of his mother's cooking. Now it was just empty rooms and silent walls. He walked to the bathroom, looked into the mirror, and hardly recognized himself. His eyes looked tired. His face looked older. He hadn't smiled in weeks. I don't have a job. I don't have a reason. Why am I still here? He whispered. Jay grabbed a glass of water from the kitchen. As he walked back to his room, he noticed something strange. His phone screen was on, even though he hadn't touched it. A message blinked on the screen. You didn't wake up by accident. Jay stopped. His heart beat a little faster. He picked up the phone and unlocked it. There was no app open, no notification, no message history. Did I imagine it? He thought. But the words stayed in his head. You didn't wake up by accident. He sat on the bed and looked outside the window. People were walking, birds were flying, cars were moving, the world was living. But he didn't feel part of it. His mother used to say, God has a plan even on your worst days. Jay never believed that before. But today, something inside him started to wonder. What if she was right? He decided to leave the house. He didn't know where he was going. He just wanted to breathe different air. He put on a hoodie, grabbed his headphones, and stepped outside. The sun was brighter now. The breeze was soft. For the first time in weeks, he noticed the sound of birds singing. Jay walked with no direction. The streets looked the same, but he felt like a stranger. Everyone seemed busy, full of purpose. But he still felt lost. He walked past the old bookstore where he and his mom used to go every Sunday. It was still there, still open. He thought about going in, but his legs kept walking. Then he reached the park. It was a small park with trees, flowers, and an old wooden bench near the pond. He used to come here as a child. His mom would pack sandwiches and tell him stories. Jay walked to the bench and sat down. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply. For a moment, the pain was quiet. Then someone sat beside him. He opened his eyes and saw an old woman. She had silver hair, kind eyes, and a soft smile. She looked like someone's grandmother. Beautiful day, she said. Jay nodded, not wanting to talk, but she didn't leave. You look tired, she added. He looked at her, surprised. Yeah, I guess. Sometimes, she said, we wake up feeling lost. But those days are the most important. Jay frowned. How do you know I feel lost? The old woman smiled gently. Because I felt it too. And I know the look in your eyes. You're wondering why you woke up today. Jay's heart skipped a beat. What? You didn't wake up by accident, she said softly. God has a reason for today. You may not see it now, but it's coming. Jay stared at her. Who are you? The woman stood up. Just someone who believes in second chances, and I think today is yours. Before he could say anything, she walked away slowly, disappearing into the trees. Jay sat there, frozen. How did she know those exact words? You didn't wake up by accident. He looked around, trying to find her, but she was gone. He walked. Back home, his mind spinning. Was it real? Was she real, or was he losing his mind? He reached home and opened the door. Everything still looked the same, but something inside him had changed, even if it was just a little. He walked to his mother's room. He hadn't entered it in weeks. He stood in the doorway, scared to go in, but then he remembered the woman's words. God has a reason for today. He stepped inside. The room still smelled like her. There were pictures on the wall, him as a baby, him at school, him holding a trophy. His mother was in every picture, smiling proudly. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked around. His hand touched the drawer by the bed. Something made him open it. Inside was a notebook. He picked it up and flipped through the pages. It was his mother's handwriting. She had written prayers, thoughts, and messages to him. One page was marked with a ribbon. It said, "If you ever find this, Jay, don't give up. God wakes you up for a reason, even when you feel broken. I believe in you, and I know one day you will help others who feel like you do now. This world needs your heart. Love, Mom." Jay's eyes filled with tears. He held the notebook close to his chest. He didn't understand everything. He didn't know what tomorrow would look like, but for the first time in months, he felt something. Hope. Maybe, just maybe. He didn't wake up by accident. Jay couldn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about the old woman from the park. Who was she? How did she know what he was feeling? And how did she say the exact words he saw on his phone? You didn't wake up by accident. Those words followed him into his dreams. He kept hearing her voice. He kept seeing her soft smile. The next morning, Jay woke up early. This time, he didn't feel so heavy. The pain was still there, but something was different. It was like a small light had turned on inside him. He got dressed and left the house. He knew where he was going, back to the park. He walked quickly, looking at every face on the way. He passed the bookstore again. He passed the coffee shop. But his eyes kept moving, searching for her. When he reached the park, the wind was calm. Birds sang in the trees. Children played near the swings. Jay looked around carefully. She wasn't there. He walked to the same bench where he met her. He sat down and waited. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Still no sign of her. Jay stood up and walked around the park. He asked himself, was she real? Did I imagine her? But he felt her presence. She was real. He knew it. He sat back down, feeling a little lost again. Just then, a small dog came running toward him. It barked happily, wagging its tail. Jay bent down and pet it. A voice called out, "Rocky, come here." Jay looked up. It was her, the old woman from yesterday. She looked surprised, too. "Oh, hello again," she said with a smile. "I didn't expect to see you here." Jay stood up quickly. "I was waiting for you." She raised her eyebrows gently. "For me?" "Yes," he said. "I needed to talk to you." She nodded, slowly, and sat on the bench. Jay sat beside her. "I don't know who you are," he said, "but you said something yesterday. Something I saw on my phone before I even met you." She looked at him calmly. "And what did you see?" he replied. "The same words you said. You didn't wake up by accident." She smiled. "Then maybe you were meant to hear it twice." Jay looked at her closely. "Who are you?" She chuckled softly. "I'm no one special. Just a woman who's been through pain, like you." Jay was quiet for a moment. "You don't even know me." She turned to face him. "Maybe I don't. But I know pain. I know the look of someone who feels like they don't belong in this world. I know that empty feeling when you wake up and ask, why?" Jay's eyes watered, but he held back his tears. "How did you know I feel that way?" She didn't answer immediately. She looked up at the sky and said, "Sometimes God places us exactly where we need to be. Maybe I sat beside you yesterday because he knew you needed a reminder." Jay's voice cracked. "I lost my mom 6 months ago. Since then, I feel like I'm walking in the dark. The woman gently placed her hand over his. Then let this be the start of something new, not the end. Jay looked down at their hands. She used to say that God had a reason for everything. Then maybe she was right, the woman said softly. Jay suddenly remembered the notebook. I found her journal yesterday. She wrote something for me. She said I would help others someday. But I don't even know how to help myself. Woman smiled kindly. Helping others doesn't start when you're perfect. It starts when you're honest, when you're willing to feel. Jay nodded slowly. Can I ask you something? He said. Of course. Are you an angel or something? She laughed gently. No, dear. Just a person. But sometimes God uses people to send messages. Jay looked into her kind eyes. Why me? Why did I get to hear the message? She leaned back and said, Because you're still here. And if you're still here, it means your purpose hasn't been completed yet. Jay felt something deep in his heart. The pain was still there, but now, so was a new feeling. Meaning. The woman looked at the pond ahead. When I was your age, she said, I also wanted to give up. I had lost my son. He was only 10. Jay's face went still. You lost your son? She nodded. Yes. I wanted to stop living. But one day, a stranger said something to me. Just one sentence. You didn't. Wake up by accident. Jay's mouth dropped open. Someone told you that too? She nodded again. Yes. And I remembered it every morning after that. It saved me. Jay whispered. Now it saved me too. The woman smiled, stood up, and called her dog. Rocky came running. She turned to Jay one last time. Go home today. Open your heart. Someone will need you soon. Jay blinked. What do you mean? You'll see, she said, and then she walked away. Jay sat on the bench, heart pounding. What did she mean, someone will need you soon? Later that evening, Jay walked home with her words still ringing in his ears. He opened the front door and stepped inside. Everything was quiet again, but it didn't feel so empty now. He looked at his mother's picture on the wall. I met someone today, Mom, he whispered. She said I have a reason, and I think you knew that too. Jay stared at the message on his phone. I know you don't know me, but I need someone to talk to. Please. He didn't recognize the number. He had no idea who sent it. But something inside him said this wasn't just a random message. His heart beat faster. He sat down on his bed and replied, Who is this? A few seconds later, the person replied, My name is Ava. I found your number in a book. A notebook, actually. I don't know why, but something told me to message you. Jay felt cold. His mother's notebook. He had taken it to the living room the night before and accidentally left it on the small table. Had someone come into the house? No, that didn't make sense. He replied again, Where did you find the notebook? Ava responded, At the community center library. It was lying on a table near the back. I picked it up to move it, but I opened it by accident, and there was a message inside. It said, If you find this, reach out to my son Jay. He needs a sign today. Jay's mouth fell open. He hadn't taken the notebook out of the house. He ran to the living room to check. It was gone. His hands shook. The notebook was really gone. But how did it end up at the community center? He texted again. That notebook belonged to my mom. She passed away. That message was meant for me. Ava replied, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to take anything. I don't know why, but I felt like I had to message you. I've been going through something hard. I didn't think anyone would understand. Jay sat on the couch, stunned. First the woman in the park, now this stranger with his mom's notebook. It felt like something was happening, something bigger than him. He took a deep breath and replied, I understand. You can talk to me. There was a pause. Then Ava sent a longer message. I lost my dad 3 months ago. He was my best friend. Since then, I've been keeping everything inside. No one gets it. But when I opened that notebook, it felt like someone cared, like someone knew I was falling apart. Jay's eyes filled with tears. It was like looking into a mirror. He typed, I lost my mom. I know that pain. I know how lonely it feels. Ava responded, then maybe we were both meant to find that notebook. Jay didn't answer right away. He looked out the window and thought about his mom. Had she known? Had she planned this? He walked back into her room. Everything was the same, but something felt different. He opened her closet slowly, not knowing why. Inside was a small box he hadn't touched in months. He pulled it out and opened it. Inside were old photos, letters, and one small sealed envelope with his name on it. Jay's hands shook as he opened it. The paper inside was soft, almost worn, with time. It read, Dear Jay, if you're reading this, then I'm no longer beside you, but my love never left. I want you to know that the pain you feel now won't last forever. One day someone will find you, someone who also feels broken. Help them, listen to them, and in doing so, you will heal too. Remember this, you didn't wake up by accident. Love always, Mom. Jay put the letter down, breathing hard. She knew. Everything she said was happening now. He picked up his phone again and texted Ava. Can I meet you? I think we were meant to. A few seconds later. Yes. There's a small cafe across from the community center. I'll be there at 5. Jay looked at the time. It was almost 4:30. He grabbed his hoodie, his keys, and headed out the door. The sky was soft with evening light when he arrived. The cafe was small but warm, with yellow lights and quiet music playing inside. He saw her through the glass. She was sitting near the window, holding the notebook in her hands. Jay took a deep breath and walked in. As he stepped closer, she looked up. They both froze for a moment. No words were needed. Jay sat down across from her. She gently pushed the notebook toward him. I'm sorry, she said softly. I didn't mean to take something personal. Jay shook his head. No, you were supposed to find it. They both looked at the notebook in silence for a while. Then Ava spoke again. When I read that message inside, it felt like she was talking to me too. Jay nodded. That's how my mom was. She always helped people, even strangers. They talked for over an hour, about grief, about memories, about loneliness. For the first time since their losses, both of them felt understood. Jay looked at her and said, I think she wanted me to help someone, but I think she also wanted someone to help me. Ava smiled. Maybe we were both the answer to each other's prayers. Jay smiled back, for the first time in what felt like forever. That night, he walked home feeling lighter, not healed, not perfect, but no longer broken. He placed the notebook gently back in his mother's drawer. Then he looked at her photo and whispered, Thank you. Because now he knew. He didn't wake up by accident, and neither did Ava. Jay started going to the cafe every afternoon. He and Ava didn't talk every day, but sometimes they sat together quietly, reading or just watching people walk by. The pain of losing their parents was still there, but it didn't feel as heavy anymore. It was like they were helping each other carry the weight. One rainy afternoon, Jay walked into the cafe and saw Ava already sitting by the window. She waved with a small smile. He ordered a coffee and joined her. But today, something felt different. Ava looked a little nervous. She kept checking her phone. Is everything okay? Jay asked. She nodded slowly. Yeah, I'm waiting for someone. A family friend. Oh, Jay said. Want me to leave? No, please stay. she said quickly. Actually, I was hoping you could meet him. Jay was confused. Why? Ava looked down. Because he knew your mom. Jay froze. What? He asked. Ava nodded. I found out a few days ago. I told him about you, and he said he used to know your mother years ago, before either of us were born. Jay's heart beat faster. What's his name? But before she could answer, the cafe door opened. A tall man in a dark coat stepped inside, shaking the rain off his umbrella. He looked around, then smiled when he saw Ava. Jay turned to look, and his heart nearly stopped. The man's face looked familiar. Too familiar. He had seen it once before. In an old photo tucked in the back of his mother's closet. Jay stood up. Slowly as the man walked over, Ava smiled. Jay, this is David. The man extended his hand. Nice to meet you. Jay shook his hand without speaking. His voice was stuck somewhere between his chest and throat. You knew my mom? Jay finally asked. David nodded. Yes, a long time ago. Her name was Claire, right? Jay nodded. David sighed. She was one of the kindest people I ever met. We were very close. Jay looked into his eyes. Were you in love with her? Ava's eyes widened and David's smile faded. There was a long silence. Then David said softly, Yes, I loved her deeply, but life took us in different directions. Jay sat back down slowly. Why didn't I ever hear about you? David looked down at the table. She probably didn't want to confuse things. When I left town, I never came back. Not until now. Jay looked at Ava, still shocked. You said he's a family friend? Jay said. Ava nodded. He's been helping my mom for years. He came back to the city recently. I didn't know any of this until 2 days ago. Jay turned to David. Why are you telling me now? David looked serious. Because I think your mother wanted us to meet. I think she left signs for you. And for me. Jay remembered the woman in the park, the notebook, the letter, and now this. Everything's connected. Jay whispered. David nodded slowly. She always believed things happen for a reason. She used to say, God's timing is never wrong. Jay stared at him. She said that to me too. David smiled, sadly. She said it to everyone, especially when they were hurting. Jay looked at the man again. So many thoughts filled his head. He didn't know whether to cry, scream, or ask more questions. But instead, he whispered, Did you ever write to her? David nodded. I wrote her many letters. She never answered, but I think she kept them. Jay leaned forward. Do you still have any of the letters? David smiled gently. No, but maybe you do. Jay looked confused. David reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. I found this in her favorite book. It was on a shelf at the old community center where she used to volunteer. It had your name on it. Jay took the envelope with shaking hands. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single note in his mother's handwriting. If you've met David, then you know. I never wanted you to carry pain alone. He was my greatest what if. And now, he may be the answer to one of your deepest questions. Trust your heart, Jay. You didn't wake up by accident. Jay's chest felt heavy again, but not with sadness. It was something else. Truth. He looked at David. Are you my father? Jay asked. Ava gasped softly. David didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, I don't know. Claire and I lost touch before she found out she was pregnant. She never told me anything, but now, maybe we should find out. Jay's head was spinning. His whole world had just shifted. He didn't know whether to be scared, angry, or thankful. But one thing was clear. His mother had planned every step. Even now, her love was still guiding him. Jay looked at Ava. Then, at David, "I want to know the truth," he said quietly. David nodded. "Then let's take the next step, together." Jay held the note tightly in his hand. It felt like his mother was still holding his heart. She had known all along. She had written the future in quiet notes, in a journal, in one final sentence that changed everything. You didn't wake up by accident. And now, Jay believed it more than ever. Jay sat on the edge of his bed, holding the envelope again. He had read his mother's note at least 10 times. Each time it hit a little deeper. David might be his father. The idea was heavy, strange, scary. He barely knew the man. And now, a blood test could change everything. Ava had called him the night before. "Are you okay?" she asked. Jay had answered with a soft voice, "I don't know." Now, one day later, he and David were sitting in a quiet room at the clinic. The walls were white, and the air smelled like alcohol wipes. The nurse came in with gentle eyes and a calm voice. "This won't take long," she said. "We'll collect your blood and compare it in the lab." David gave a small nod. Jay did, too. Both men rolled up their sleeves in silence. As the nurse took the samples, Jay looked at David's hands. They were large, strong, but his touch was soft, just like Jay's mom had been. Kind, quiet, steady. The nurse smiled. "Results will be ready in 2 days. We'll call you." Jay nodded. "Thank you." As they walked out of the clinic, David turned to Jay. "Do you want to grab something to eat?" Jay hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." They went to a small diner nearby, the kind with old booths and the smell of pancakes in the air. They sat, across from each other. The silence was heavy. Finally, David spoke. "I don't want to scare you, Jay. Whatever the results say, I want to be here for you." Jay looked down at the table. "Why didn't you come back when you left Mom?" David sighed. "I wanted to. I planned to. But I got a job overseas, and then life kept moving. When I finally came back, it was too late. She was already gone." Jay nodded slowly. "She loved you," he said softly. "She never said much, but I could feel it. In her letters, in her silence." David blinked hard, as if holding back tears. "And I never stopped loving her. Not for one day." Jay looked out the window. The city lights flickered in the wet. Streets. His heart felt full of questions, but also something new. Hope. 2 days later, the clinic called. Jay was home alone. The phone rang. He picked it up with shaking hands. "This is Jay," he said. "Hi, Jay. This is Emily from the clinic. I have your test results." Jay closed his eyes. "Okay. The DNA match between you and Mr. David Carter is 99.9%. Jay didn't speak. "Congratulations," the nurse said softly. "He is your biological father," Jay whispered. "Thank you." He hung up the phone and sat in silence. His mind raced. So it was true. David wasn't just a stranger from the past. He was his father. Jay's first instinct was to cry. But then he smiled, because in that moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in months. Not just sadness, not just confusion, but connection. Later that evening, Jay met David and Ava at the cafe. He walked in with a quiet smile. David stood up, nervous. Jay looked him in the eyes. "It's true," he said. "You're my dad." David's hands shook. He stepped forward, unsure of what to do. Then Jay did something that surprised them both. He hugged him, not a small hug, a real, full one. David wrapped his arms around Jay and held him tight. For a few seconds, the world felt still. Ava smiled through her tears. She had never seen anything so beautiful. They all sat down. Jay said, "I still don't know what all this means, but I think Mom wanted me to have you in my life." David nodded, wiping his eyes. And I want to be in it. Jay looked at Ava. None of this would have happened if you hadn't messaged me. Ava laughed softly. It all started with a notebook. Jay smiled. A notebook that changed everything. David pulled out a small photo from his wallet. It was old, folded at the edges. "This is the last picture I took with your mom," he said, handing it to Jay. Jay looked at the photo. His mom was smiling, standing next to a younger David. They looked happy, whole. Jay ran his fingers over the picture. "I want to know everything," he said. "About her, about you, about the life I never knew." David smiled. "And I'll tell you everything. As much as you want." They spent the evening talking, laughing, remembering. The pain didn't leave completely, but now it sat beside something stronger. Love, healing, truth. Jay went home that night, holding the photo close to his chest. Before sleeping, he stood by his mom's picture. "I met him, Mom," he whispered. "You were right. He's good. He's kind. And he loves you." He paused. "And he loves me too." He smiled through his tears. "You didn't wake up by accident," he whispered to himself. And now, he finally believed it. Jay was starting to feel whole again. For weeks, he had been spending time with David. They took walks, shared meals, and talked about the past, his mother, childhood stories, even silly memories David remembered about Claire's favorite foods and music. Sometimes Jay would laugh and say, "I never knew that about her." David would smile and reply, "There's still so much to tell." Jay felt something he hadn't felt in months: peace. But peace doesn't always last. One evening, Jay and Ava were walking by the river. The sun was setting, painting the sky in gold and purple. They were laughing about something silly David had said earlier when Jay's phone rang. He looked at the screen. Unknown number. Jay hesitated, then picked up. "Hello?" There was silence at first. Then a shaky voice said, "Is this Jay?" "Yes," Jay replied. "Who is this?" I don't know how to say this," the voice said, "but I think I'm your sister." Jay stopped walking. Ava looked at him with concern. "What is it?" Jay turned pale. "What did you say?" The voice continued. "My name is Emily. I found a letter from my mom. It said I have a half-brother, and that his name is Jay." Jay couldn't speak. His legs felt weak. "I don't understand," he whispered. "Who's your mother?" The voice paused. Her name was Claire. Jay almost dropped the phone. His heart started racing. "Where are you?" he asked quickly. "I'm in Chicago," she said. "I've been living here with my dad, but my mom, she passed away 2 years ago. Last week I found the letter she wrote before she died." Jay sat on the nearest bench. Ava sat beside him, worried. "I thought I was an only child," Jay said. "I did too," Emily whispered. Jay looked at the sky. It was getting darker, but his mind felt even more cloudy. "Can you send me a picture?" he asked softly. "Of course," Emily replied. Seconds later, his phone buzzed. A photo appeared. It was a girl, maybe 18 or 19. She had long brown hair and eyes just like his mother's. Jay stared at the photo. Then he whispered, "You look just like her." Emily's voice broke. "I've always wanted to know more about her. I knew she kept secrets, but this was the biggest one." Jay took a deep breath. "We need to meet." "Yes," she said. "Please, I want to understand everything." Jay hung up and sat in silence. Ava finally asked, "Who is that?" Jay looked at her with wide eyes. "I think I just found my sister." The next day, Jay told David everything. David was just as shocked. "She never told me she had another child," David said quietly. "I can't believe it." Jay nodded. "Me neither. But the voice, the photo, it felt real." Did she say who her father is? She said she grew up with her dad, but it wasn't you. Her mom never told her anything until after she died. David sat back, thinking. Claire must have had Emily after we lost touch. She kept it all hidden. Jay nodded. But why? Why keep us apart? David looked at him. Maybe she was trying to protect you both. Or maybe she was just scared. Jay sighed. She left me clues, a journal, letters. Maybe she wanted me to find Emily too. David smiled gently. Maybe. This is the final piece. Jay booked a train to Chicago the next day. Ava went with him. They arrived late in the evening. The city lights were bright, but Jay's heart felt heavy. He was nervous. What if it was all a mistake? But when Emily opened the door, Jay knew. She stood there with tears in her eyes, holding the same photo of their mother that Jay kept in his room. I've been waiting for this moment, she said softly. Jay stepped forward and hugged her. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't strange. It felt right, like missing pieces of the same puzzle finally coming together. They spent hours talking, sharing stories, laughing at memories, crying over things they never knew. Jay learned that Emily's childhood had been hard too, different but lonely. Her mom had never talked much about her past, but now it all made sense. Jay looked at her and said, "We lost her, but maybe we found each other for a reason." Emily smiled. Maybe God wanted us to meet. Jay held her hand and whispered the words his mother used to say, "You didn't wake up by accident." Later that night, Jay sent a voice message to David. She's real. Her name is Emily, and she's kind and brave. She looks just like Mom. I don't know why Mom kept her a secret, but I think she wanted me to find her eventually. I think this was the last part of the journey. Jay looked at the stars through the window of Emily's apartment. He felt something deep inside, not confusion, not fear, but completion. He now knew the truth about his mother. He had found his father, and now his sister too. The story wasn't over yet, but one thing was clear. God had been guiding every step. Jay couldn't sleep. Even though he had found Emily, and now had a sister, his mind was full of questions. Why had their mother kept so many secrets? Why hide Emily's existence? Why leave behind clues and letters, but never tell the whole story? Emily noticed his silence. "You're thinking about her again, aren't you?" she asked gently. Jay nodded. "I just want to understand her completely. I want to know what she was feeling." Emily stood up and walked to her small bookshelf. She pulled out something wrapped in a scarf. It was their mother's old Bible. "I didn't want to open this before," Emily said softly. "It felt too personal. But now, I think you should." Jay carefully unwrapped it. The Bible was worn and soft. Inside the cover, Claire's name was written in neat handwriting. He slowly flipped through the pages. Verses were underlined. Small notes were written in the margins. It felt like she had talked to God through every page. Then something fell out. It was a folded letter, tucked between the pages of Jeremiah 29:11. Jay picked it up with shaking hands. The verse was underlined in red ink. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Jay stared at those words, then slowly opened the letter. It was addressed to "My children." His hands trembled as he began to read aloud. "My dearest Jay and Emily, if you are reading this, then it means the truth has been revealed. Maybe you found each other. Maybe you didn't. But I hope, with all my heart, that one day you will. Jay, you were my first miracle. You gave me strength when I had nothing. You were my reason to live after David and I parted ways. I wanted to tell you everything. I really did, but I was scared. I didn't want to break your heart. Emily, my sweet girl, I'm sorry I didn't raise you the way you deserved. Life changed. I made mistakes. I gave you to your father, hoping you would be safe, even if I wasn't around. I wish I could have given you more. I prayed every night that one day God would bring you two together, that He would guide you to the truth. My time in this world was short, but my love for you both was endless. Please don't be angry with me. Please don't hate me for the choices I made. You are both part of me. And if you're holding this letter, then it means God's plan is still working, even when you don't understand it. Forgive me, and love each other. You didn't wake up by accident. God has a reason for every day. Love, Mom. Jay couldn't speak. He stared at the letter as tears rolled down his face. Emily's eyes were wet, too. She wrote it for both of us, she whispered. She wanted us to find this, together. Jay nodded slowly. She didn't just leave us behind. She was trying to guide us even after she was gone. Emily held the Bible close. She had faith in God's plan. Jay looked at her and smiled through his tears. And maybe we're part of that plan now. That night, they called David. Jay, read the letter out loud. David didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice cracked. She always had hope, he said. Even when she was alone. Jay replied, She wasn't alone, Dad. She had us, even if we didn't know it. The next morning, Jay and Emily visited their mother's grave together. They placed the letter and a fresh flower beside the stone. Jay whispered, We found each other, Mom. Emily added, And we forgive you. They stood in silence, hand in hand, letting the peace of the moment settle deep inside them. Jay looked up at the sky and smiled. I understand now, he said quietly. You didn't wake up by accident because you were part of something bigger. Later that day, Jay sat at his desk, opened his laptop, and began to write. He titled the page, You didn't wake up by accident. God has a reason for today. Began sharing the full story. His story, Emily's story, their mom's story. He didn't hold anything back. The pain, the surprises, the love, and most of all, the way everything connected in the end. He hoped others would read it and remember that even when life feels broken, even when the truth feels hidden, there is still purpose. There is still a plan. And every morning when your eyes open, it's for a reason. The sun rose gently over the city. Jay stood by his window, watching the golden light touch the rooftops. A soft breeze blew through the curtains, and for the first time in a long while, his heart felt calm. Everything had changed, but not in the way he once feared. He had lost his mother. But in losing her, he had found more than he ever expected. His father, his sister, and his purpose. Ava walked into the room and smiled. You're up early. Jay smiled back. Couldn't sleep. I've been thinking. About her? About everything, Jay replied. And how maybe we never really walk alone, even when it feels like we do. Ava sat beside him. It's like she said, Jay. God had a reason for every day. Jay nodded slowly. Even the painful ones. He picked up the small Bible Emily had given him. His mother's Bible. The final letter was tucked safely inside. Jay whispered, Her story led to mine. And now, I think it's time to tell it. A week later, Jay published his first video online. He titled it, You Didn't Wake Up by Accident. God Has a Reason for Today. It started with a photo of his mother smiling, then a simple sentence in his voice. This isn't just my story. It's a story about how God's plan works, even when we don't understand it. He talked about the morning his mother died, the pain that followed, the stranger who turned out to be his father, the long-lost sister, and the hidden letter that brought it all together. Jay didn't cry in the video, but his voice was filled with emotion. He ended with a message. You may be going through something right now. Maybe your heart is broken. Maybe you feel lost. But please remember, you didn't wake up by accident. You're here for a reason. You're still part of a bigger story, and even when you can't see the plan, God can. That video went viral. Thousands of people watched it. Some cried. Some left comments like, "This healed something inside me. I was about to give up until I saw this. God sent me this today. I needed it more than you know." Jay couldn't believe it. He had turned his pain into purpose. He had turned his loss into light, and he wasn't done yet. He started making more videos, simple, honest, emotional. Stories about healing, hope, and faith. Every time someone commented, "Thank you," Jay would smile and whisper, "Thank you, Mom." Months passed. Emily moved closer to the city so she and Jay could stay connected. David started joining their Sunday dinners. They were building what they never had before, a real family, and Ava, she stayed by Jay's side through all of it. One evening, Jay visited his mother's grave alone. He sat down beside the headstone holding her Bible in his lap. "Mom," he whispered, "your plan was messy. It hurt. It confused me. But I see it now. I see what you were trying to do." A warm breeze touched his face almost like a hug. He opened the Bible again. The page fell back to Jeremiah 29:11, the verse she had underlined. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord." Jay smiled. "Yeah," he whispered. "You really did." That night, Jay wrote something in his journal. He titled it, "Final Thoughts." Then he wrote, "Some days, life feels unfair. Some days, the weight is too heavy. Some days, we ask, why me? But what if God isn't punishing us? What if He's preparing us? Every tear, every twist, every unanswered question was leading somewhere good. Maybe we can't see the plan now, but later we'll look back and realize it was already in motion. And on that day, we'll finally understand we didn't wake up by accident. We woke up because our story wasn't finished yet. Epilogue. Year later, Jay stood on a small stage in a community hall. The room was full of people, young, old, broken, healing. He shared his story again, but this time in person. At the end, he said, "You may not know the reason for your pain right now. You may be walking through the dark, but the light is coming. Please hold on, because God's plan was already in motion before you even knew you needed it." The crowd stood and clapped, not just for Jay, but for the truth he had shared. And somewhere in that quiet space after the applause, Jay felt it again. That same deep voice in his heart. You didn't wake up by accident.